Hello everyone, welcome to the daily editorial analysis brought to you by Shankar IAS Academy, 27th March 2025. Displayed here are the topics for the discussion today. The first, the role of communities in conserving water. The article is taken from the newspaper The Hindu, which is talking about the importance of communities in water conservation. So in this topic, we will be discussing what are the issues that we need to consider while framing a water policy and what is the current water scenario in India, and then we will also discuss some of the measures taken by the government of India to promote the water conservation. And the next topic is the CBSE's 2 exam scheme overcomplicates things. The article is taken from the newspaper The Hindu, which is talking about the 2 exam scheme proposed by the Central Board of Secondary Education. In this topic, we will be discussing what is this scheme, what are the challenges or concerns associated with this, and how it is aligning with the 2020 National Education Policy, and what are the provisions in the scheme going against the objectives of the NEP 2020. So without much delay, let's get into our discussion with the first article. The role of communities in conserving water. The article is taken from the newspaper The Hindu, which is talking about the importance of community participation in water conservation. So why we are discussing this article today? We know that the March 22nd is observed as World Water Day. And yesterday we discussed another article about the glacier, and the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed this year as the International Year of Glacier and Glacier Preservation. And from this year onwards, every March 21st will be observed as World Glacier Day. So remember, March 21st is World Glacier Day, March 22nd is World Water Day. So remember this. And this year, for the World Water Day, the Ministry of Jal Shakti launched the Jal Shakti Abhiyan Catch the Rain campaign 2025, which is giving importance to the community participation in water conservation. And this article is talking about the certain issues that we need to consider while framing a water conservation or water management policy. So let us discuss more about this article from the mains point of view. So the topic for the discussion is water conservation, and this can be expected in the mains GS paper 3. And coming to the water conservation in India, to understand about the water conservation in India, we have to understand about the development of national water policy since 1987. So the national water policy was introduced in 1987, and that gave focus on improving the drinking water, irrigation, hydropower, navigation, and industry. And in 2002, the principles of this national water policy was further enhanced and introduced the role of community participation in water planning and water conservation. And in 2012, the principles of this national water policy was further enhanced and acknowledged this water as an economic good, and also gave provisions for integrated management of the water and pricing strategies. So coming to the current water scenario in India, we know that India is holding around 18 to 20% of the world population, but it has only 4% of the global fresh water. So here you can see that the estimation of the Niti Aayog is saying that by 2030, the water demand will exceed 2 times than the water supply, which can widen the problem of water scarcity. And this will affect a large portion of population in India, and that can even reduce the 6% of the India's GDP. And another study was conducted by the Yale University in 2022, and the university ranked India 141 out of 180 nations for unsafe drinking water. And the university also found that 70% of the fresh water in India is polluted, and that is directly or indirectly causing 2 lakh deaths annually. And according to the World Bank estimation, in another 2 decades, if the groundwater depletion is going in this phase, in another 2 decades, nearly 60% of the districts in India will face severe groundwater scarcity. And this is an estimation given by the World Bank. So now we are going to see some of the measures taken by the government of India for the water conservation. So first is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which guarantees 100 days jobs to the rurally unemployed people. And the employment includes conservation of the local dams, canals, and other irrigation system, regeneration and restructuring of this water conservation structures in the rural area. So this is also contributing to the water conservation in the rural area. And the next is Jal Shakti Abhiyan Catch the Rain 2025, which is talking about the importance of community participation, rainwater harvesting, and also repairing and restructuring of the water conservation infrastructure. And the next is we have the Adal Mission for Regeneration and Urban Transformation 2.0, which is talking about which is giving importance to the urban water management. And the next we have the Adal Bahujal Yojana, and this scheme is focusing on groundwater management in nearly 8,000 plus water stressed villages in India. And next we have the Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, which is focusing on enhancing the water efficiency in agriculture through reducing the water wastage, through emphasizing the importance of micro irrigation technologies like sprinkler irrigation and drip irrigation. And next we have the Bureau of Water Use Efficiency. This bureau is focusing on enhancing water use efficiency in all aspects of the human activities. And the next we have the mission Amrit Sarovar. This scheme is focusing on regeneration of 75 water reserves, 75 water reservoirs per districts. So what are the key issues in India's water conservation policy? The first is the underutilization of the indigenous knowledge. We are talking about the role of community participation in water conservation, but at the same time, the community's knowledge is still underutilized. For example, the 2002 amendment of the National Water Policy included the community participation, but at the same time, when it comes to the decision making, it lies with the authorities. For example, if you take the Water User Association, this is a statutory body established in various states since 1990s, and this includes the farming community and other communities who are directly depending on the water. But when it comes to the decision making, the members of this body don't have any authority. That lies with the state authorities. So that's why you can see that even if they are present in the water conservation, they don't have any role in decision making, which is ultimately resulting in underutilization of the indigenous knowledge, which here you can see the lack of true community participation. And the next is mitigating the vulnerability of the weakest section. For example, if you take the climate change itself, if you take the climate change is disproportionately affecting the society. For example, if you take the rising sea level, first it will affect the coastal community, then it will affect the farming community, and then only it will affect the people living in high latitude or higher altitude regions. So the impact of the climate change or any climate events will affect the society disproportionately, and the first victims will be the weaker sections or the marginalized sections in the society, and that means they will be affected both socially and economically. Therefore, when we are framing a policy, we need to protect the interest of the weaker sections in the society as well. And that includes landless farmers, tribal groups, women, because they are facing the biggest problem of the climate change. And the next is addressing the fragmentation in the water management. This is another major issue in our water conservation policy. For example, if you take the factors of the nature, for example, the forest, water, land, and biodiversity, none of the policies are considering the interdependence of these factors. For example, if you take the deforestation will make the region vulnerable. It will result in land degradation, and the land degradation means there will be no water capturing is happening. That means the water will run off, and that will eventually make the region more vulnerable to water scarcity, which will ultimately affect the biodiversity. So, but you can see none of the schemes are actually addressing the interdependence of these factors. So we have to frame a holistic a policy which accepts the interdependence of these factors, and that is needed for the sustainable conservation of the nature as well as the water resource. And for example, you can see that the communities in the western part of India, especially in Rajasthan, they have orans, which means sacred forest, and this sacred forest traps the surface runoff of the water, and it improves the groundwater recharge and encouraging the water harvesting. So these type of ideas can be taken from the indigenous communities, and we can apply and in the water conservation strategies, and we can make it more effective with the modern technology. So we have to frame this type of approach to enhance the water conservation and management in India, rather than going for a disjoint or fragmented policy for different for conserving different factors of the nature. And the next is recognition of rights of the nature. For example, whenever we go for framing a policy for conservation of nature, most of the policies will be human centric, that will address the problems faced by the humans. But we have to address the problems faced by the animals, we have to address the problems faced by other factors in the nature, for example, forest. And now we can see in the global level there is a shift towards recognizing the intrinsic value of the nature, and in India we need a standalone framework for this. But you can see occasionally the Indian courts have upheld the nature's rights, but water policies still prioritize human use over the ecosystem balance. For example, recently in 2023, the Great Indian Bustard case, and in the Great Indian Bustard case, the Supreme Court directed the Rajasthan government to remove all the barriers that affects the ecosystem or the life of the Great Indian Bustards. So in this way, and here the Supreme Court highlighted the importance of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. That means you can see the scope of the Article 21 of the Indian Constitution is expanding far beyond the human. That is applicable to the the nature, the living beings in the nature as well. So these type of efforts are taken in the Indian courts, but we need a standalone framework or act or policy to address the need of the rights of the nature. And the next is climate change and water crisis. So like I already mentioned before, India has only 4% of the global fresh water, and it is holding around 18% of the global population on other side. And in the coming days, for both the economical activities and for non-economical activities, the water demand will increase. And according to the Niti Aayog, we can see that there will be twice demand for water than the water supply. So this raises concern about the widening water scarcity in the society. And a nature study, that is a study published in the magazine Nature, warns that the rising global temperature will worsen India's water deficit. And therefore the policies, whatever we are framing from here onwards, must address the climate resilient water system that should strengthen the water conservation practices with the combined knowledge of both indigenous people as well as with the modern technologies. And the next is it should incorporate climate adaptation into water management. So let us see some of the way forwards. First is empowering the communities in the decision making. So like I mentioned, the local communities are present in conservation activities, but when it comes to the decision making, they don't have a real power, which is here it is lacking the true community participation. So here we have to address that. And the next is integrating the traditional knowledge and the modern water management technology can effectively helps in water conservation and management. And the next is holistic approach is needed, that is linking water conservation with the forest and other climate policies and other factors of the climate. Like I mentioned, instead of going for separate management of forest, land, biodiversity and soil, we can frame a holistic framework to protect everything, and that acknowledges or that accepts the interdependence of all these factors. And the next is community centric and ecosystem based conservation strategies. That means we have to go beyond the human centric approach. So in this topic we discussed water conservation, what are the challenges, some of the measures taken by the government of India to conserve the water, and next we discussed what is the water scenario of India. And based on our discussion, try to answer this mains practice question. The question is critically analyze India's water conservation policies in addressing groundwater depletion and pollution. Discuss with a case study such as the success or failure of Mission Amrit Sarovar and Atal Bhujal Yojana, and suggest a sustainable water management strategy. And this is a 10 marks question and you have to write around 150 words. Write the answer, post it in the comment section. We will review and we will reply for your answer. The CBSE's 2 exam scheme overcomplicates things. The article is taken from the newspaper The Hindu, which is talking about the 2 exam scheme proposed by CBSE. And in this topic, we will be discussing what is the scheme and what are the concerns or challenges associated with this. And next, we will also see how it is aligning with the National Education Policy of 2020. So the 2 examination scheme, and this can be expected. This is an education related topic, so you can expect that is in Indian society in GS 1 or also in GS paper 2. The draft scheme for the 2 examination, it is released by the CBSE, that is Central Board of Secondary Education. And what is this scheme? 2 exam sessions. That means from 2026 onwards, the 10th students can write 2 board exams. The first phase will be held in February, March, and the second phase will be held in May. And the students who wrote in the first phase, if they are not satisfied with the performance in the exam, then they can reappear for the exam in the May. And the best score from the exam will be considered for the further admission. So what is the objective of this scheme? It is the objective is to reduce stress and pressure on the students, and also to promote the conceptual learning in the students. And the CBSE is claiming that it is aligning with the 2020 National Education Policy goals. So here we have to understand what is meant by this National Education Policy 2020. So in 1980s, during the time of Rajiv Gandhi tenure, there was a National Education Policy which aimed to modernize the education system. And the National Education Policy 2020, it is further planning to enhance and transform the education system in India. So how it is going to transform the Indian education system? First, it is transforming the structure. It is changing the structure of the current education system from 10+2 to 5+3+3+4. And the next is competency based board examination, rather than giving importance to writing too much importance to writing and memorizing things. And the next is importance to the mother tongue. That means up to the 5th grade, the instruction will be in mother tongue. But here the psychologists and doctors raised the concern that is the best time to teach something to someone is before the age of 10. So if you are providing the English education after 5th grade, means after the age of 10, means it is raising concerns about the students' English ability to understand the English and develop the language. And we know that English is the gateway or window to the world knowledge. We know that. And the next is focus on vocational education from class 6. And the next is shift to concept and reducing the pattern of memorizing the things and pasting it in the answer sheet. And here you can see that the CBSE's 2 examination scheme is giving more importance to the conceptual learning rather than memorizing the concepts. So what are the challenges in it? The first is logistical challenges. That is, according to the estimation that in 2026, at least an average of 26.6 lakh students are expected to write the class 10 board exams. And if you are going with the 2 exam scheme, then it will exceed the answer sheet above 1 crore and 72 lakh, and which requires a massive evaluation infrastructure. We need a very good manpower, and also it is time consuming. And ensuring uniform grading across multiple exams is very difficult, and overlapping with the class 10th examination. That means at least 20 lakh students will appear for the class 12th examination, and this adds administrative burden too. And the next is lack of clarity about the question paper design. So the CBSE is currently claiming that they are changing the pattern to make the students to understand the concept in a much better way. But it needs a redesign in the question paper pattern. How they are going to redesign this question paper pattern, that is still uncertain and unclear. Therefore, this type of unclarity or this type of uncertainty makes more creates more pressure on the students, and they have to go for coaching, and that will bring more both psychological stress as well as financial stress on the students, especially the students from the marginalized communities or from the backward communities. And the next is impact on students and schools. That is, instead of reducing stress, students may face continuous examination pressure, and this is because of the limited time between the first phase and the second phase of the 2 exams. For example, the first phase of the exam will be over by February or March, and the second phase will be starting in May. So the time gap is very limited. So here, instead of understanding the concepts, the students there's a possibility that the students will go for memorizing the concepts, and again it is not aligning with it is not fulfilling the objectives of the 2 examination scheme or the national education policy of 2020. And for that, this problem can be resolved if we can provide a proper remedial classes for the students in the gap between the first phase and the second phase. And another major issue is the delay in the admission to the 11th standard. For example, if the students are reappearing for the examination in the May, then the result will delay, and the students have to wait for a very long time to get admission to the 11th standard. And the next major issue is the financial burden and equity concern. That is the mandatory non-refundable examination fee. That is, once this scheme is introduced, once the scheme is implemented, then there will be an enhanced examination fee, and that covers both the first phase and the second phase. What if the student is not appearing for the second phase? Then it is bringing additional financial burden to the students, and especially the students from the marginalized communities. And at the same time, therefore, you can see the coaching institutes will exploit the situation, and this will further widens the education inequality in India, and that is also against the NEP's principle. And what can be done? And the next is revise exam fee structure to ensure financial fairness. We know that the exam, there will be an enhanced fees, and that is not refundable, and therefore we have to reconsider the exam fee structure. And the next is conduct phased implementation with the pilot testing in diverse schools. So instead of going for a broad implementation, you have to start testing programs. Then only you can go for the broader scheme, because then only you can understand about the concerns, challenges, and other issues present in the 2 examination scheme. So in this topic, we discussed the 2 examination scheme proposed by the Central Board of Secondary Education, and what are the challenges in it, and how it is aligning with the NEP 2020, and what are the provisions that is going contradict with the NEP 2020 policy. So Based on our discussion, try to answer this mains practice question. The question is, the CBSE's proposed two-exam scheme aims to reduce student stress and enhance conceptual learning. However, it may inadvertently increase logistical challenges, financial burden, and reinforce rote learning. Critically analyze the implication of this reform in the context of the National Education Policy 2020, and it is a 15 marks question, and you have to write around 250 words. Write the answer and post it in the comment section. We will review and we will reply for your answer. With this, we are coming to the conclusion for today's editorial analysis. If you like the video, hit the like button, give your feedbacks as comments, and share this content with your friends. And before leaving this channel, don't forget to subscribe and also hit the bell icon to receive on-time updates from Shankar IAS Academy. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for listening to me. Have a nice evening.